Once there was a woodcutter with 2 children and their stepmother. The boy's name was Hansel, and the girl's name was Gretel. They lived so poorly that sometimes there was not even anything to eat. And then one evening he lay in bed, pondering how to feed the children further. His wife advised him to have children in the forest, light a fire, give a piece of bread each and leave them there, not all 4 of them die of hunger. But the woodcutter did not agree. And until then, his wife persuaded him that he finally agreed. And the children, because of hunger, also could not sleep and heard everything that their stepmother said to their father. And when the parents fell asleep, Hansel secretly rushed out of the house. The moon was shining brightly, and the white stones glittered like coins. Hansel pocketed as many of them as he could fit. Then he returned home and the children went to bed. In the morning, the stepmother came to the children, gave each of them a piece of bread, and they all went to the forest together. On the way, Hansel threw out white stones one by one. When they arrived at the clearing, my father began to light a fire. He ordered the children to sit near the fire and make sure that it didn't go out, while they and their stepmother would go for more firewood. They sat, tired, and fell fast asleep. When the children woke up, it was a dark night all around. And when a full month had risen in the sky, Hansel took his sister by the hand and went, looking for the way through the pebbles, which glittered like new coins, and showed them the way. They walked all night long, and at dawn they came to their father's house. Some time passed. And the children again heard how the stepmother one night began to beg their father to get rid of the children. He refused, but his wife did not want to listen to him. She cursed and expressed all sorts of reproaches to him. When the parents fell asleep, Hansel, like the last time, wanted to collect stones, but the stepmother locked the door and the boy could not leave the house.
Thank you.
Early in the morning, the children were given a piece of bread each, even less than the previous time. On the way to the forest, Hansel shredded his piece in his pocket and threw the crumbs on the ground. The stepmother took them even further into the forest. Again a big fire was lit, and the father ordered the children to watch the fire while they and their stepmother chopped some more wood. When lunchtime came, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel. And they fell asleep. We woke up when the dark night fell. And then a month came up, and they got together on their way, but they could not find a single crumbs, because thousands of birds fluttering in the forest had long been eating those crumbs. So the children walked for a very long time, but they could not get out of the forest. Suddenly, the road led them to the hut. Coming closer, the children saw that the house was all built of bread and biscuits, and the windows were made of pure sugar. Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the roof, while Gretel went to the window and began gnawing at its windows. And then the door in the hut opened wide, and the old woman came out, leaning on a crutch. Hansel and Gretel were so scared that they even dropped their tidbits from their hands. And the old woman was kind and invited them to her hut. There was already abundant food on the table: milk, cookies, apples, and nuts. After dinner, the old woman made 2 clean beds for the children, and Hansel and her sister thought they were in heaven. But the old woman only pretended to be affectionate, but in fact she was an evil witch, who built her bread hut for this purpose in order to lure children. Early in the morning, while the children were sleeping, she took Hansel and put him in a small cage. And she ordered her sister to do everything that the wicked witch demanded of her. The old woman decided to fatten the boy in order to eat him later. So Gretel began to cook the most delicious food for Hansel, and she herself got nothing but leftovers. Some time passed, and the boy did not get fat. Then the old woman did not want to wait any longer, and decided to cook and eat Hansel. She ordered Gretel to light the stove and apply water. When the stove warmed up, the old woman ordered her to climb into the stove and see if it was hot enough. So she wanted to push the girl into the fire and bake her. But Gretel knew what was on her mind. She said that she did not know how to get in there, and asked the witch to show herself. The old woman got angry and climbed into the oven. Then Gretel pushed her and slammed the shutter behind the witch. Wow, how terribly the old woman howled then. Gretel, meanwhile, rushed to Hansel and opened the cage. Having freed their brother, they went to the witch's room, in which there were boxes of pearls and precious stones in all corners, filled their pockets with them, and went home. For several days the children were looking for their way back. The forest seemed more and more familiar, and at last they saw their father's house in the distance. How glad he was to see his children alive! Hansel and Gretel poured on the floor all the pearls and gems they had taken from the witch. There was no need to think about food. And they began to live, live, and rejoice. And the father drove the evil stepmother out of the house. Once upon a time there was a miller with his beautiful daughter. He really wanted to get rich, so he did nothing but lie to others. The people did not like this, and they complained about the miller to the young king. The king decided to teach the miller a lesson and called him to the castle. Introducing himself to the king, the miller told about his beautiful daughter. He lied that she knew how to turn straw into threads of gold. The king asked the miller's daughter to come to the castle the next day and show everyone her abilities. When the father told his daughter about this, she was furious that he had lied again. The next day they went to the castle. The king led the girl into a room in which a spinning wheel and a basket of straw were prepared. The king ordered that by dawn all the straw turns to gold, and if she fails, then her father will be punished for deception. The girl looked at the straw and cried bitterly. Suddenly, the room lit up with light, and a small man appeared in the middle of it. The midget asked why she was crying. The girl told him everything. The little man offered to help, but in return he asked for a necklace that hung around the girl's neck. She agreed. And the dwarf set to work. As soon as he turned all the straw into gold, the little man disappeared as suddenly as he appeared. Morning has come. The king entered the room and was amazed at what he saw.
Cool.
The girl was happy. But instead of letting her go, the king brought in more straw. He ordered to turn it into gold by morning. The girl began to cry again. But then the dwarf appeared before her again. This time he asked in return for a precious ring that her mother had given the girl. The dwarf took the ring and began to spin straw. By morning the baskets were full of gold. When the king entered the room, he was very pleased.
Cool.
But instead of letting go of the girl, this time he filled the whole room with straw. The king ordered all the straw to turn to gold by dawn. In return, he promised to pardon his father and make her queen. As soon as the king left the room, the dwarf appeared again. But this time, the girl couldn't give him anything. And then the little man said that he would turn the straw into gold if in return the future queen would give her child, who would be born. The girl saw no other way out, and therefore accepted his offer. When morning came, the king saw gold, and was very happy. This time he kept his promise. He freed the girl's father, and made her his wife. So the miller's daughter became queen. After a while, her child was born. And one day, when the girl was putting him to bed, a little man appeared. He warned that he would take the child in 3 days if the queen did not find out the dwarf's name. As soon as the little man disappeared, the girl asked the servants to make a list of all the names in the kingdom. By morning the servants brought the list. When the dwarf appeared, he asked the queen what his name was. She began to read all the names on the list one by one. When the queen had finished, the little man said that none of the names fit. And he disappeared. The girl asked the servants to make a list of all the names in the neighboring kingdoms. By morning, the servants had written on a piece of paper all the names they found. When the dwarf appeared, he asked the queen what his name was. She began to read all the names on the list one by one. But there was no right one among them. And the little man disappeared. The queen asked the servants to visit all known countries and collect as many names as possible. At dawn, a servant told the queen that he had seen an unusual situation the night before. Walking through the woods, he came across a small house. In the courtyard near the fire, some dwarfs sang a song that tomorrow the queen's child would finally be his. And at the same time joyfully shouted out his name. His name was Rumpelstiltskin. When morning came, the dwarf appeared again. He asked the queen what his name was. The girl pretended not to know his name and began to read the names from the list. With each new wrong answer of the queen, the little man became more and more joyful. Finally, the girl uttered his name. And at the same moment, the ground under the feet of the dwarf crackled, and he fell into a huge hole. So the queen got rid of the greedy little man. Later, she told the king about everything. He saw that the queen was sorry for what had happened and forgave her. Since then, they have lived happily ever after.